In this video, we are going to review factoring, and in some problems you have to use more than one method in one problem. So to review the different tools that we have to factor, we have greatest common factor, grouping, which is essentially just doing the greatest common factor 3 times, product sum, and the difference of squares. If you look at this problem right here, 12x to the 4th minus 48x squared, the first place that we're always going to look, the first tool that we will try is greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor between 12x to the 4th and 48x squared happens to be 12x squared. And remember that when you factor something out, when you factor out a greatest common factor, you're basically just undistributing. So you just need to try to think, what do you have to multiply 12x squared by? What do I need to distribute that to get this result up here? So 12x squared times an additional x squared would give me 12x to the 4th, and 12x squared times a negative 4 would give me negative 48x squared. Now this is where some people might think that they're finished. We have pulled out a greatest common factor, but I'm going to remind us of something called prime factorization, where we have something like the number 36. 36 can be broken down into 3 times 12, or there's a few other things that we could do. But since we're asked for prime factorization, we can't stop there, because the 12 can actually be broken down into 3 times 4, and then the 4 can actually be broken down even further into the 2 times 2. So just because something is broken down into 2 factors doesn't mean that it's completely factored, because sometimes you can take one of the factors even further. Now in this case, once you have a monomial on the outside, 12x squared, you don't need to write that in completely factored form. You don't have to write that with prime factorization. But you do need to look at all of your other factors to see if they can be broken down. In this case, x squared minus 4 can be broken down. We can't use grouping because there's only 2 terms here, but we can use the product sum, and there's a couple of different ways that we can look at this. The first way is to set this up like a trinomial, x squared plus 0x minus 4, since there are no regular x's in the middle, and we can use product sum. Since greatest common factor didn't work and grouping didn't work, we can try product sum. So we are looking for 2 numbers that multiply to 1 times negative 4, which is negative 4, and add to 0. Well, the 2 numbers that multiply to negative 4 and add to 0 are 2 and negative 2. So now we can break our middle term, 0x, down into plus 2x minus 2x. All we've done is take 0x and written it as 2 separate terms, which would simplify back to 0x. And then we can apply grouping to this situation right here. To review grouping, you just look at 2 things that have a common term, or a common factor, like x squared plus 2x, the greatest common factor is x. And when we undistribute or pull that factor out, we're left with x plus 2. And you do the same thing on the other side, trying to keep in mind that you want another x plus 2. So in order for me to end up with a positive x plus 2, I actually have to pull out a negative 2 on this side. So those were the first 2 terms that we've pulled out. So we've done greatest common factor twice. And I always say that grouping is just like doing greatest common factor 3 times. So the 3rd time is where you actually have to pull out this common factor of x plus 2. And when you pull that common factor of x plus 2, what you're left with inside would be x minus 2. So this is one way to definitely continue factoring x squared minus 4. But one of the shortcuts or tricks that we've learned is difference of squares. If you have the difference, it's hugely important that you have the difference or subtraction of 2 perfect squares, then we've noticed that when we multiply those out, or when we distribute two things like this out, the middle term cancels out because we have plus 2 and minus 2, so the middle term will cancel out to 0. So if we have the difference of two perfect squares, you can almost immediately take it to this step that we have right here. So we've broken down x squared minus 4 into x plus 2 and x minus 2. Don't forget the 12x squared that's out front. He doesn't just disappear. And you always want to check if you can take anything further. 12x squared is monomial. We can't take that any further. X plus 2 and x minus 2, there's nothing else that we can do with them. So this is our final answer. 12x squared times the quantity of x plus 2 times the quantity of x minus 2.